title of this presentation is Five Railroads, One City, One Layout, and modeling Michigan City, Indiana, circa 1960, and today's date here. So, okay, so those of you who don't know me, I recognize a couple names. I'm an avid modeler and a rail fan since the age of 12 when I got bit by the bug. Grew up blocks from the crossing of the Lakeshore Michigan Southern and the Michigan Central in Porter, Indiana. I'm just live down the street now in Michigan City. I am the New York Central Historical Society's modeling committee chairman. So a lot of my extracurricular work outside of work is involved with promoting the New York Central Historical Society. And that picture was taken about 1993. So who knew that 15 years later that I would be climbing up into a blue locomotive every day. So that's the railroad that pays the bills, not the one that makes the bills. So I'm a locomotive engineer for Chicago's Metro. I work on the Rock Island District, running commuter trains in and out of Chicago's LaSalle Street Station to Blue Island and Joliet every day. So kind of runs in the family. If you count brothers, I am a fifth generation railroader. So I kind of figure that that's a little exciting about my personal details. Along with that, if you guys were local and remember Wings and Things Hobbies in downtown Chesterton, I worked there from about 1994 to 2001 when it was downtown. So if you guys stopped in, kind of recognize the face plus another 100 pounds or so, but so you might recognize me from there. And I always like to thank people who put photos online and shared their experiences. This photo was taken about 1963, about 15 years even before I came around. So, and really 30 years before I really started exploring the area. So without people sharing their experiences, none of this would have been taken place. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about with the One City, One Railroad and the five railroads. We're going to talk about the Givens and Druthers, the places that I considered, why I selected Michigan City, and then dividing the city into layout design elements. And then using those layout design elements, look at layout number 1, which was started and then stopped, and then layout number 2, which is currently under construction, and a friend's layout in South Suburban Crete. He's modeling portion of his layout, and it features a small town, or small portion of his layout features Michigan City. So using the LDEs, we're going to look at how 3 different railroads are depicted. So the Givens and Druthers, what did I want? I wanted a prototype-based layout in Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, or Ohio. One of the big things I wanted to do was host prototype operating sessions. My thing is switching in industries over long runs. If I had 1,400 square feet, yeah, I'd have long runs, but we didn't have that. So I wanted to focus on industries and interchanges more than a big classification yard. Another point that I wanted, 2 railroads, one of which was a New York Central property. As long as it showed up and a locomotive was there, that was good. Linear and walk-around design was a must. I didn't want to sit at a seat and watch trains run around in a circle. The ability to orbit trains or continuous run loop was a plus, but not necessary. And in the 60s and 70s, but be able to be era flexible was another thing. So if I wanted to bump it up 30 years and make it a short line railroad after the railroads pulled out, I could put my freelance stuff on it and call it good, or back it up another 30 years and put steam locomotives on it and still call it good. So layout 1 started as a 10.5 foot by 12 foot spare bedroom, had an additional 6 foot closet, and the entry doorway was a 3 foot by 3 foot off that side of that. So a clear 10 foot by 12 foot. And when my wife said that she was pregnant, that kind of that spare bedroom went away. And then fast forward about 13 years, layout number 2 is a 12 by 23 foot room in a newly constructed detached garage. And that has an entry doorway that swings in on the 23 foot wall in the corner. So pretty much a clear room except for the door swing in the corner. So where did I look at? You know, when I say that I wanted to model a place in Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, or Michigan, Fort Wayne was an area, the south end of the branch from Jackson, the New York Central branch, connected with the nickel plate on one end. Lafayette, actually two areas in Lafayette, down by the river where the joint nickel plate and New York Central Big Four line between Indianapolis and Kankakee ran together, crossed the Monon, crossed the Wabash. And then the Lafayette belt kind of on the east side of town, connected with the New York Central and the nickel plate on one end, and then served a whole bunch of industries, and then connected up with the Wabash on the north end of town. Just up the lake from me, South Haven, St. Joseph, Benton Harbor was a end of a branch line from Louisville, Kentucky, a Big Four line. And then there was also another branch that came up from South Bend. And that was kind of shortened. So in the 60s, it ended up being a kind of an upside down J fashion that operated as a stub and branch line, and the C&O crossed there as well. South Haven, Michigan, the next town up, had a branch line coming in from on the Pure Marquette, came in from Paw Paw and Kalamazoo, I believe, was the end of it. And then Kalamazoo branch ran straight from Kalamazoo right to South Haven, the New York Central Michigan Central line. Grand Rapids, Mackinac City. Grand Rapids had the Pure Marquette, the Pensy, the New York Central, Grand Trunk. The Mackinac City.
Do you want to change that?
Excuse me? Okay. Mackinac City, kind of the Pensy and the New York Central came up together and started shoving freight cars onto the Chief Watana, I believe I pronounced that correctly, for a ferry across the Straits of Mackinac to the Sioux Line, or the DSS&A and the Upper Peninsula. Moving on, but Crawfordsville, Indiana, South Bend, Mishawaka, Elkhart, specifically the Elkhart and Western branch in the Mishawaka area, not on the main line on the south side of the St. Joe River. And then Michigan City is kind of what I ended up selecting. So where is Michigan City for those of us that aren't in the area? Well, it's on the south tip of Lake Michigan, about as far north in Indiana as you can get without going into Michigan, right on the beaches of sandy Lake Michigan. So why did I choose it? Well, 4 of the 5 railroads met in one area. 2 of those railroads were branch line terminuses or terminals of branch lines. It was close for research field trips. As I said, I live in Michigan City now, so it's anywhere from a quarter of a mile to 2 miles to the other side of town. So it's, if I had 15 minutes to run out and look at a building, I could easily do it. Lots of historical photos I found online. Local history groups are active on social media, and we'll see some of their photos that they have presented. Sanborn maps from 1884 to 1936 are all online. 1960s are on microfiche at the library. The city directories, a lot of people don't think of those as a modeling tool, but if you really wanted to get down to it and put names on mailboxes, you could look up who lived at 321 Main Street in 1962 and put that name on that mailbox. And there was a wide variety of rail-served industries, as we'll look at, I believe, on this slide. Yes, this is from the New York Central Freight Delivery Circular, and they listed every single customer in every single town that the New York Central served. So see if I can move this out so I can see here. Just to name a few: furniture, bicycles, bottled glass, cough drops, electric power, foundries, freight car builder, Pullman Standard, that is, fuel and oil gas distributors, furniture, garden tools, ice, lighter fluid manufacturer, lumber companies, mining machineries, if you believe that, plastic plumbing items, prefab homes. The prison was here, which was a receiver of coal for the radio or for heat, sheet metal works. Waterworks got coal inside. Wire goods. I kind of found interesting the metal box cheese grater that everybody has, probably made here in Michigan City, and work gloves. So, you know, a wide variety of industries that were rail served in town. So here we go is a Google Earth satellite photo of Michigan City here. If you can see my mouse, we got Lake Michigan here and a creek with a harbor that feeds out into Lake Michigan. So the biggest industry in early Michigan City was lumber. Lumber was loaded on sailing ships from the Upper Peninsula, Upper Michigan, Wisconsin, brought down by boat and then transferred or transported inland. to give you an idea, there is a 36-foot boxcar right here, if you can see my mouse, kind of in the lower center of the screen, right on top of the creek. And all of these piles are lumber, stacked lumber. So it's 2-3 times taller than a 36-foot boxcar. So we're talking like 20 feet tall stack of lumber. As far as you can see, probably that's almost a half mile in the distance there. So lumber was a big early industry in Michigan City. So why is Michigan City called Michigan City? Well, you talk to somebody and they'll say, yes, it was in Michigan at one time. Well, it kind of was. It was in the Michigan territory. And then when Indiana became a state in 1816 or 1814, I believe it was, they moved the border 10 miles north. So Indiana had 10-mile vertical shoreline of Lake Michigan. Originally, it was right at the southern tip, right there by Greg's house in Gary. And then the first in the Indiana Mammoth Improvement Projects, or a works progress, or a government-funded project, was the Michigan Road. This was a road, like a street road, that was built from the Ohio River up through Indianapolis to South Bend, and then to the port city of Michigan City. The Michigan Road was the terminus of Michigan City was the terminus of the Michigan Road, where Michigan City got its name. So the first railroad is the Michigan Central, came in from Michigan, Detroit, Ontario in 1850, and that's shown here in green. By 1852, well, they decide Chicago is going to be the terminal city, and the Louisville, New Albany, and Salem, later the Monon, shown here in yellow, build south, and they complete their line to Lafayette and eventually to Louisville by the mid 1850s. But 1852 it was opened through Michigan City. 1871, after the Civil War, the Nickel Plate, or the Lake Erie and Western as it was known, Peru and Indianapolis even earlier than that, opens a line from Indianapolis north to Michigan City. 1903, the Pier Marquette opens a line from Grand Rapids, skirts the eastern shore of Lake Michigan, crosses on the south side of town, and then ends up in Chicago. 1908, the interurbans take over. Shown in the red here, or the maroon, is a interurban line, came from South Bend through LaPorte and offered streetcar service on 3 different lines. It actually started as a horse route in the 1880s, but it was connected to the outside in 1908 and electrified. And then the South Shore, the Chicago South Shore and South Bend, which started as the Chicago Lakeshore and South Bend, 1908, comes through town, builds across 10th and 11th Street, and then builds a branch up to the harbor area where they build their powerhouse right up on the harbor. By the 30s and onward, the Northern Indiana Railroad's gone, so we won't really talk much about them. But from the 30s and onwards, these are the 5 railroads that serve the city. And we'll look at each one of them quickly. The bigger picture, the New York Central, stretching from Boston and New York across upstate New York, along the southern shore of Lake Erie and the northern shore of Lake Erie through Ontario, extensive branch lines in Ohio, Indiana, and Michigan, all the way to Chicago, St. Louis, Cincinnati, up to the tip of northern Michigan, down to the southern, or the coal fields of West Virginia. So pretty extensive railroad. And specifically, we're looking at the Michigan Central, which started in Detroit, ran with many branch lines across the southern part of the state, and a branch across the eastern all the way up to Mackinac City. So if I say Michigan Central and New York Central, I'm kind of using the 2 terms interchangeably. The New York Central leased the Michigan Central in 1922. So you talk to somebody and it's still the Michigan Central today. So we had 7 through passenger trains between Chicago and New York in each direction. Some of them turned back at Detroit, some of them turned back at Albany. But we have the Wolverine, the Michigan Mail and Express train, the Twilight Limited, and Detroit Special, Motor City Special. That's the westbound trains. And the eastbound trains, the same things, between Detroit, Buffalo, and New York heading east. One thing I found interesting is there was no through freights on the New York Central, Michigan Central after 1959. What had happened is the main line, you can follow here from Jackson up through Augusta, Battle Creek, Kalamazoo, then down to Niles, and then to Porter, and then on into Chicago. all the through freights that were routed on the main line, they rerouted them via the hump at Elkhart. So the through freights came up this branch through White Pigeon, up to Three Rivers, and then down what they called the Michigan Airline, or the Jackson to Elkhart subdivision, to Jackson. So the only freights that we had on the west end between Porter and Niles was just a turn freight. So no through freights. And being a New York Central modeler, that kind of scratches your head, but it makes up for it in other reasons, which we'll see later. The Monon, when they said that the Monon put an X across the state of Indiana, you can see on the map, it really did. Made up of two different railroads. One, the new running from Louisville up to Michigan City, and then another one from Indianapolis to Chicago, and the two met at the little town of Monon, Indiana. So by the 60s, the line to Michigan City was really operated as a branch from Monon north, and then the main line was from Chicago to Monon, Lafayette, then down through Bloomington, Lafayette, and then down to Louisville. The freights that we had a through freight coming in from Lafayette, came into town, then it yarded its train, and then a local crew, a city switcher crew, came on duty, broke that train up, served the industries and interchanges. And then around late morning, a turn local came in from Monon, and that was serving most of the industries on the line. And then it quickly departed as soon as it got in, switched out a couple cars, and then went back south. And then in the evening, train 57 was built by that yard crew that was on duty during the day, and then it headed south toward Lafayette and connections beyond that. No passenger trains on the Monon since the 1930s. The nickel plate are the Chicago, the New York, Chicago, and St. Louis stretch from here, Buffalo to Chicago, Peoria, and St. Louis, but we're really looking at the Lake Erie and Western portion of the nickel plate, which ran from Sandusky down through Muncie, across through Tipton, Lafayette, and to Peoria, and then a branch from Fort Wayne south to, I forget the name of those towns, Beesons, I think. And then the branch that we're looking at really is the Indianapolis to Michigan City branch, shown right here in the middle. And that was based, the crew base was out of Peru, which is right in the middle of the division here. So their freight operations had a through freight departing for Peru in the morning, a fast freight coming in from Indianapolis in the late morning, and then a fast freight turning around in the afternoon, and then a through freight, which would serve the industries, arriving from Peru in the evening. And then they also had a local crew that used the road power to serve the industries and interchanges during the day in the city. Next railroad here, we have the C&O, Newport News through Chicago, Cincinnati, and then extensive lines in the middle portion of the lower peninsula of Michigan, which before 1948 was the Pure Marquette. Again, like the New York Central and the Michigan Central, if I say the Pure Marquette, I'm interchanging it with the C&O. So Pure Marquette after 1948, or sorry, before 1948, and the C&O after 1948. They had a line from Buffalo through Detroit, extensive branch lines in the middle part of Michigan, car ferry from Ludington to Wisconsin, and then their main line through Grand Rapids, skirting the east side of the lake to Chicago. I don't have a freight schedule, but they did have a daily passenger train all the way to 1971, and then about 1984, Amtrak reinstated that line. The South Shore, or the Chicago South Shore and South Bend as it's formerly known at the time, as it says, Chicago around the South Shore of Lake Michigan to South Bend, and Michigan City is their hub of activity right here on the south end. 16 trains or 18 trains between Chicago and South Bend, 3 of them to Michigan City, and then 16 and 5 to on the other direction. So pretty much hourly service to South Bend from Chicago throughout the day. There was a couple hours in the evening and nights that they weren't run, but hourly service throughout the day on the South Shore line. So talking about layout design elements, if any of you read Model Railroader, familiar with Tony Coaster, he's wrote the book on layout design elements. And a quote that I like from one of the handouts, it says, select interesting track arrangements on the prototype, reproduce them in scale, and fit those elements together in the available layout space. So we have Michigan City, other way, Michigan City here. So I selected interesting elements on each one. So I broke down the city into 11 different elements. So the first one up here, I'm calling the Michigan City Yard, that kind of just focuses on the yard area of Michigan City on the east side of town. The harbor area, where all four of the railroads met. Michigan City, Pullman, or Michigan Central, Monon, Pullman, this area here, where the Michigan Central and the Monon ran together. A little further south, the Monon South Yard. Let's see, then going with the South Shore here, the South Shore Shops. The yellow area is where two layout design elements overlap. So I'm calling the South Shore Shops this rectangle here, and then the nickel plate one here, which we'll look at in a second. But the South Shore 10th and 11th Street running across here. South Shore Lincoln Avenue up near the lake and the power plant on the west side of town. The nickel plate here in red, let's have the yard area, the South Harbor Spur, which ran on the south side of the creek, and then the Carroll Ave or the South Shore Shops area here, and then finally the Pier Marquette. So we'll look at a couple pictures and what makes each one of these 11 LDEs interesting. So starting at the Monon South Yard, we're down here, we're going to start working our way north. So we see here an aerial photo. This here on the south side is Highway 20. For those of you that are familiar, US 421 is about a mile to the east here. So we're looking north. You see the lake up in the far distance here. Couple industries here, Clark Equipment, they made semi-trailers, and then Dr. Scholl's adhesive tape, Arno tape, ARNO, was just off the frame here to the right. And you kind of can see the yard, kind of, it's only 4 tracks, but it's in here. If any are familiar with the city, Stribel Pond, which is kind of a water retention pond and walking area now, occupies this field right here. So you kind of have an idea of where we're talking about. But luckily, John Behringer, the president of the Monon in the late 50s or early 50s, and maybe into the 40s, took a lot of photos, and a lot of his photos are online. So here we're looking north along the Monon. It's the kind of the middle of the yard. We have the main line on the right, track 1, as they called it, here on the center, and then track 2 on the left. And far beyond the signal, there was another siding track on the right-hand side of the main line. So if you're here on the track 1, you could use this as your switching lead and sort cars into 4 different tracks. So I thought that was interesting. A little further up, here's the 4th track. The main line here is the 2nd track on the left, and we're on this new track, as they called it, all the way on the right. So they funneled down to 2 tracks. And as we work our way north a little more, this is the north end of the yard. The main line here is on the left. The track 1 here is that we're on. And then this is a servicing track. There was a turntable in this area here and a roundhouse that was here about 1949. It was raised, but a fuel tank car sitting here so that the diesel engines could be serviced. And then on the tower here, I think the next slide, no, by the way, the next slide here, here's the Pier Marquette crossing. Wood frame tower, and then an interchange track running behind the tower here. This shot looks west along the Pier Marquette. What we were just looking at is to the left, north is to the right toward the downtown area, and we're looking west along the Pier Marquette. The interchange track is back here in the weeds on the right-hand side. Leaving that area to the LDE that I called the Michigan City Monon Pullman area. We're going to start again on the south end of town, or the south end of this diagram, and then work north. New York Central has track maps, so the area in white here, we see the Monon coming up, paralleling some industries here. The prison is here, a chair manufacturer, a hat company, some interchange with the Monon. And again, another Behringer photo. Here we're looking north on the Monon, brand new United States Navy PS1 door and a half boxcars ready to be delivered. I believe these were 1949 or 1950. So we're looking north here toward downtown again. See the Michigan Central coming in on the left here. Let's see, what's my next slide? So this shot here, if you look here, this signal that's right in the center of the photograph, that is the New York Central, Michigan Central signal for eastbound traffic. So that signal is right here in the trail of steam from this H10, I believe, or H7 Mikado type. We're looking kind of, this looks kind of south toward or southwest, west-southwest. This is not the interlocking tower. This is a enclosed crossing watchman tower. So we see the Monon track right here in front. This train's on the Michigan Central west or eastbound track, and then the westbound track is on the back side here. So this looks almost the same shot. This is the New York Central westbound track, the eastbound, and then the Monon tracks off to the side here. It's about a 1941 photo, I believe it was. Next shot, again, another Behringer photo. We see the South Shore crossing here at 10th Street, kind of in the road here, at kind of on the left-hand side, you can see the rails. And then here's the interlocking tower at 10th Street. A little further in the background is Pullman's North Plant. You can see a brand new PS1 boxcar there. And what I found was very interesting here is on the left side of the screen here is a tilting target signal, and a little more research in it, that the interlocking between the New York, or the crossing of the New York Central and the South Shore was interlocked. However, the crossing of the Monon was not interlocked with the South Shore. So you have searchlight signals to get authority past the crossing on the New York Central. The South Shore also had a color light signal, but a tilting target like a semaphore, but it would go up and down, vertical, completely up and down, so you could see if you were clear to cross. A little bit later shot, this is an Emery Goulash shot, 1964, I believe it was. The eastbound New York Central main was removed, and now we see a little pot signal here where that tilting target was on the right-hand side of the screen here. So now it was interlocked, and if you look straight down a little further, you see this fixed approach semaphore that would be for southbound on the Monon, which was put right in the former eastbound main line of the New York Central. And in the back, you see a Monon BL2 kind of hanging out here, but we'll get further that way here in a minute. But that is I believe it's the Wolverine that is heading towards Chicago. Uh-oh, mouse isn't working. Oh well, so this shot looks exactly the same part, just turn around kind of behind you. We see a Pullman 45 tonner side rod switcher pulling a new Santa Fe reefer, and a Monon BL2 waiting to cross. Well, why are they waiting to cross? Well, here's the South Shore freight just trundling across. So this shot's taken from the tower again, looking north of a Monon yard crew heading south, pulling a cut. Looks like from the Michigan Central with a Canadian National boxcar, probably full of newsprint for the Indianapolis Star. So that boxcar next to that BL2 would have come from Canada through Detroit to the Michigan Central to the Monon, and then headed south to the Indianapolis Star. Same shot, 1949 photo looking north, another Behringer photo. We can see on the left here that Pullman did their own switching of cars, and all the Monon would do was drop off inbound supply cars, either brake components, wheels, raw steel, and they would just drop them on these two interchange tracks, and then the Pullman company would pick them up and take them inside the plant where they needed to go. Another Pullman 45 ton here with a later 50-foot combo door PS1 boxcar. And to say how big the Pullman standard plant was, there was two plants, the north plant and the south plant. This is just the north plant. If you know where Lighthouse Outlet Mall is, well, that's where we're talking about. It took up this whole area, about 5 blocks north and south and about 3 blocks east and west. So the New York Central and Monon kind of runs at a diagonal area on the left-hand side to the top center, and then all these tracks coming out of the building on the lower curve south, and then the interchange between Pullman and Monon was off to the side here. Moving up to the harbor area, which I kind of think is the most interesting with the 4 railroads all in one area. Again, the same New York Central map, we're just looking at the other side. Have the Monon here in the dashed line. My mouse decides to work again. Monon in the dashed line follows siding and interchange with the New York Central. The New York Central had a small freight yard, former shops and turntable and roundhouse here, but by the 60s, all that was taken out. And then the Monon crossed the New York Central on a track, and then the New York Central came here, and then they interchanged with the South Shore up this way, up top of the screen. Excuse me. This is a Sanborn map from 1936, so we can see how really detailed it is. Have the Monon tracks here, a lumber yard, a power supply company, Monon Freight House. Here's a furniture factory, a grocery distributor, a lumber yard, and then the Michigan Central coming across here in arcing, and then you can see part of the roundhouse here left in 1936 Sanborn map. But this shot looks kind of southwest, so opposite of what we were looking at. The Monon and the New York Central curving around along the south side. North-South Street, Franklin Street, Highway 421 will take you all the way down to Lafayette. This is pretty much the terminal of the Monon side, where Freight House and industries here. So we'll look here a little bit more, but when we get down off the air. So this is a New York Central train heading west towards Chicago. This is Highway 12 or 3rd Street in Michigan City. The Monon and the Monon tracks on the right-hand side of the screen, and the New York Central on the left-hand side. Move up a little bit. This is a Eugene Van Dusen photo that of a short passenger train, but with a lot of head-in traffic. There's only one coach on the rear end, and the station here is in the trees. This is one of my shots from about 1996. After the Monon was taken up in 1985, the South Shore continued to serve a couple industries in the harbor area. So this is actually on the old Monon tracks, and they're shoving this load of lumber, this boxcar full of lumber, to the lumber yard. So see the Michigan Central here off to the side, and it crosses at a diamond just back behind the trees here. This photo, I kind of call it the inspiration photo. This is a Jeff, I think he's from the South Bend area. Jeff and his brother sell a lot of photos, but this is taken from the Zoo Tower in Michigan City, looking kind of west. So we see the New York Central Freight House, the former yard shop complex, which is now a construction company. Off here on the left-hand side is the Monon Freight House. And then we have a lumber yard, the New York Central passenger station with a BL2 kind of on the backside, and then Nipsco's power plant, Northern Indiana Public Service Company, in the far distance. The shot here, 1963, I believe it was, of a passenger train eastbound this time, making a stop in front of the New York Central Depot. The harbor area, you can kind of see a little bit of the Lake Michigan water off to the right-hand side of the screen here. Modern day photo, still Amtrak runs through the area. The New York Central passenger station is kind of on the endangered list right now. A developer has their eye on it, but you know, it's still, you can see where the old eastbound track ran. There was the old station platform still buried on the site here. 1949 Perry Johnson photo from the New York Central Historical Society collection, showing a eastbound H7 or 8, I believe, heading east with a whole bunch of reefers heading east. Same location as the last two photos. Here's the New York Central Freight House, just a standard 2-story brick on office on one end, and then a single story with transfer doors along the south side here, or on the track side. So you can kind of see one track kind of buried in the track here, but this is about a 1972 photo after the freight house had closed and been sold to a construction company. Aerial shot, we see the same New York Central freight house on the bottom part here, and then the Monon freight house kind of in the top center. The one track here running right through the center is the New York Central main line. By this time this photo was taken, it was single track, and then we can see some yard tracks here in front of the New York Central freight house, and then an interchange track here next to the Monon freight house, and then there was other tracks on the other side of the Monon freight house, up would be on the south side here. Ground shot, the Monon freight house, and you can see the crossing gate for the Michigan Central main line just off to the left here. And on the south side, what the Monon did is in the 60s, they had the train 56 as it came in from Lafayette, dropped their entire train into the yard, and then came with the engines down to the freight house and tied them up, and then the crew went on rest in the bunkhouse inside the freight house. And then they left their engines on the south side. So a lot of Monon photos are taken on the south side of the freight house, where we see two EMD re-engined H10 or H1544s that have been got a new EMD prime mover, and then we see a Monon F3. That's kind of the in the late 50s and early 60s, that was pretty much the power, either BL2s, F3s, or these two H15s. And then in the mid 60s, C628 Alcos were delivered, and they used those as a single engine. We can see another Canadian Pacific or Canadian National freight car here, likely newsprint heading toward the Indianapolis Star. And then as the line curved around, they interchanged with the nickel plate. We'll getting into another layout design element here, but this is kind of, if you know where Highway 12 by the casino, Blue Chip Casino, crosses the creek, there's a bridge there, and this is really underneath the bridge today. So the Highway 12 overpass bridge is straight up ahead. This shot, another Perry Johnson photo, kind of looks back toward the area, so we can see the creek crossing, or the Michigan Central crossing the creek on a swing bridge, and then extensive yard tracks on the New York Central side, and then here in the almost in the center, the Monon freight house, and then the New York Central freight house all the way on the right hand side. So the Michigan Central yard area is the next LDE that I want to talk about. About 6 or 8 tracks on the north side of the main line, and about 4 on the south side. And we can see here the nickel plate is shown as an interchange here. So not too many photos that I have of this yard area, but some of the iconic structures is the swing bridge, which is still here today. Had an operator's bay up on top, and you can see it was coal-fired with the smokestack. This is a 1928 photo, I believe, but it's been electrified since then. As we can see here, this is from a couple years ago photo that I took, kind of looking back out Lake Michigan, just beyond the water treatment plant, or the water purification plant, and then the zoo up on the dune up here. So this train's heading east toward Detroit. Kind of a iconic railroad structure. This is a Harry Zimmerman photo, I believe, from about 1950. Shows a westbound New York Central train taking on coal at the coaling tower. So that moving on to the South Shore Shops area, if you look online, probably 90% of the photos taken in Michigan City are taken from this area. So the South Shore was nice enough to include their track diagram or their overhead diagram in their timetables, so we know exactly how the track was arranged. And this is from 1970 timetable. So this shot is taken from the Pure Marquette Casino overpass bridge on the east side of the layout design element area. The fan trip train here is on the connection to the South Shore Pure Marquette, and a railroad official today would really have a heyday with all these fans standing on the bridge and on the right of way and such like that. So days of time gone by. One of my photos from about 1994, taken from the Roski Avenue Bridge of the South Shore diesel facility. can see the commuter cars all lined up. This was a weekend day with all these cars here. And then on the other side of the photo, or the other side of the bridge, turn around and you're looking at the old shop complex. This happens to be a Tim Vermandy photo about 1970. So we see a couple MU cars, a New York Central 700 or ex-New York Central 700 class CC six motor locomotive here. And a present day photo, I believe this is about 2 years ago, shows half the South Shore fleet, mostly GP38s-2s, and then a couple ex-Iowa Interstate SD38-2s are populate the roster today. You can't pass up the big 800 class 2DD2 locomotives. Do not call them a Little Joe in Michigan City. They were 800 classes. You'll be corrected by any South Shore employee. But the Milwaukee Road had similar locomotives, and the South Shore had 3 of these. 2 of them are still preserved. One at the Illinois Railway Museum, which 803 is this one, and then another one in Erie, Pennsylvania at the Lakeshore Museum. Former New York Central R2 locomotives, 6 motors. They were all often operated in pairs, and we can see this on the south side of the shops, ready for a caboose hop. Present modern day photo, couple South Shore GP38s lining up to cross our, and then a South Shore commuter crossing on the main line. And these, the South Shore operates the former nickel plate trackage today. So that looks south along the nickel plate where the 2009 is tied up for the evening. Same shot, just turned around 90 degrees. We see a South Shore 800 pulling cars off the nickel plate interchange. And then moving out of that, still on the South Shore to 10th and 11th Streets, kind of, I think, the most iconic part of Michigan City. If you talk to any rail fans, what they want to talk about is the street running on 10th and 11th Streets, which is in the process of being moved to the curb, actually, as you can put it. It's still going to be in the same location, but they're just moving it to the sidewalk. So the South Shore, really nothing in the area on the street running, crosses the Monon and the New York Central at this time of the map, the Penn Central. And then on the west end of town had a couple industries and passing sightings. So just look at it here, South Shore eastbound train at Pine Street. You'd think of Indiana as a flatland, but Michigan City has some decent short little hills or sand dunes, as we can see here. The train cresting the curve or cresting the hill. Almost at the same spot at the bottom of the hill, turning the curve here, another South Shore train in the winter. And they stopped in the street for the passenger station. And you can see them here getting ready to load the cars to Chicago. And up until earlier this summer, they still loaded in the street. Part of the portion of removing the South Shore from the street is putting up a high platform area. So this scene is earlier in the summer. I could say that this scene happens 20 times a day, but unfortunately it does not anymore. South Shore freight motors, box cab motors heading westbound. Here's the passenger station here on the left-hand side of the screen. Then as the moving toward the west end of town, the South Shore goes through an S curve and then moves from 10th Street, or sorry, 11th Street. I just dropped my mouse. Give me 1 second here, please. Through an S curve from 10th Street to 11th Street. So he's on 11th Street doing the S curve to 10th Street. This shot looks exactly the same spot, but on 10th Street looking west. So we can see the Monon and the New York Central here crossing. Uh-oh. I don't know what that slide was supposed to be. One of my photos from a couple years ago, looking back east on 10th Street, and we see the signal and the crossing gate, excuse me, for the Monon, or now Amtrak, but the former New York Central Monon crossing. And at the east or west end of town, as we leave street running, we are on a train looking back east, and there was a spring switch passing sighting, only about 8 cars long, that were waiting for a westbound train to come here, and the passing sighting would be here on the left-hand side, and then a hand throw freight sighting on the right-hand side. And a couple years ago, this was rearranged, so but a spring switch sighting. And then at the other side of the spring switch sighting, we're on the rear end of a westbound train passing an eastbound train. We see some coal hoppers here on the hand throw sighting all the way off to the left. And then here's the track on the right. And then here's the track to the left that leads to the next layout design element area. And that is what I call Lincoln Avenue Yard and Nipsco area, which is up here along the lake. And the South Shore was nice enough to include their track diagram. Kind of can think of this as a split in 2 areas. The top part here being these tracks here, the 546 PH1, 2, 3. This is the powerhouse, so the Nipsco power generating station. And then the other part of the area is tracks 545, which is the interchange to the Monon, the Monon and the Michigan Central. So how their freight interchange work is the connection from the harbor area. The Monon and the New York Central would come in here, drop their cars off on track 3, and then pick up their respective track 2 or track 4, and then head back to their railroad. So one of the iconic things in Michigan City is this large cooling tower. You think that everyone thinks it happens to be a nuclear plant, but it's not. It's a coal-fired plant, and we can see a whole bunch of coal hoppers or coal gondolas here on the left-hand side, ready to be either sent back to the Powder River area, but it is a coal-fired plant. It's not a nuclear plant. 1973 Rich Taylor photo, same basic location. We can see the cooling tower in the area, and then a 700 and 701, one of the former New York Central R2 box cabs, pulling a cut of cars off the interchange. This shot's actually taken from a South Shore 700 in the power plant area, and we see the 4 tracks, and this pair of Monon BL2s picking up a cut of coal cars, Virginian, and then a New York Central hopper here ready to take these back south. So if we look back at the map, this train that the track that the train is on is the delivery to the Monon from the South Shore. So and they're getting ready to head back to their tracks. South Shore is switching one of the industries in this area, and they're crossing Highway 12 right here off 3rd Street. And then same shot, just look back the other way, pulling this Milwaukee Road boxcar around the curve, and then we can see the power station off here on the left-hand side. And then today, kind of looks like this, but it's been expanded in the 70s. Have a New York or a SW1, former Chicago Northwestern, pulling cars through a rotary dumper. And here's an SW 1200, same location, just a little bit further west. This is probably in the 80s with a different throw hopper. And then today, that same locomotive that we just saw was rebuilt into a green goat, as they call it, this locomotive here with a throw gondola. Moving over to the nickel plate side of things, we have the harbor, the creek in the harbor on the south side, or on this side, but we're looking at the area over here, kind of where Blue Chip Casino is right now. The nickel plate guys in their historical society was nice enough to publish a book of track diagrams, which I picked up. So we see all their tracks, and each track is numbered with a different industry. So we have yard tracks and some industry tracks, and this mess of tracks in here is the locomotive servicing area with a Y. There wasn't a roundhouse and turntable on the nickel plate, just a Y in servicing tracks. So we can see part of the Harbor Creek in this area, but very few photos taken here. This is a photo about 1963, and the photographer's name just escaped me. It'll come to me later, but a RS-36, which is kind of a rarity in the time period that I'm modeling, up till about 1963. GP7s and 9s on the nickel plate was the only thing here, so this is kind of a rarity here. But before 1951, H6 class 280s were the common power on the line. So we can see two of them here. One of them getting ready to take a train south, and then another one back here on the servicing track. This is a Perry Johnson photo from about 1949. The servicing track here, I have to look at it again, but a coal conveyor loaded right off the bottom. You see a gentleman standing right here operating the probably a belt driven into to feed coal into the tender. The nickel plate Carroll Avenue is where they cross the South Shore. Some of photos from here. Again, another track map from the Nickel Plate Historical Society. See the South Shore in dashed lines and a connection on both sides, the north side and the south side of the nickel plate. This is a I forget, about 1949 photo of another H class 6 heading into town. So this is kind of looking south on the nickel plate toward Indianapolis and Peru. And no, the South Shore did not put pantographs on their cabooses, as we can see here on the left. There's a box cab that's behind that caboose there. But interchange tracks, we see the next shot, this looks back the other way. The South Shore crossing from left to right, and then the nickel plate up to the interchange yard here. So we can see the two interchange tracks on either side of the nickel plate, one here on the left and one here on the right. Nickel plate GP7 pulling, working the small 4-track yard. Earlier shot from a couple years ago, same location, looking back north along the nickel plate. The South Shore operates the nickel plate from Michigan City south toward Kingsbury, and they use it. The north side of the yard is kind of a staging or a freight classification yard. So that's where these hoppers are being staged for customers along the line. Another shot, same day. And you see the track arrangements is almost identical. There is no interchange track on the west-hand side. That's been removed, but the interchange track on the east-hand side is still there. So almost in the 50 years from this photograph and the other ones, the track arrangement has not changed much at all. This one is another GP9 of the nickel plate moving along one of the yard tracks here. Royal Furniture, they made steel desks. That was a nickel plate served industry. And then some freight cars here, a couple tank cars and box cars. Looks like a gondola or two in the background here. A little bit later, photo 1973, another Rich Taylor photo. This shows a former Wabash GP9s with torpedo tubes heading south along the taking a train south, or a yard crew working the industries. And then the west interchange, another South Shore 800 pulling cars off the interchange track. And this one here has been removed, but all the other tracks are still in place today. And then nickel plate South Harbor spur, kind of a spur line that came off the main branch and then connected back up here with the Monon and the South Shore in this area. Again, not too much here, but it's interesting. We have only about 4 tracks, but there's an ice and cold storage. There's a lumber yard, the Monon interchange, a fuel and oil dealer. There's a coal yard here, freight house. So we'll look at a couple of the industries right along here. Aerial photo. This kind of looks south, so we see the creek in the harbor area, and we're looking at everything here on the left-hand side of the screen. So this building here has got 1, 2, 3, 4 box cars and a tank car lined up here, and then another 4 or 5 box cars here. And this industry here is Bloxham and Company. It's still there today. And what they did is they made, in the 60s, they made seat cushions for automobiles. But if you look at the old Sanborn maps, it was a hair facility. And what they did was they took in the freight circular from the New York Central, there's a special notation that it said salted green cow switches are to be delivered here. And what that was oxtails, and they used the hair from oxtails or cow tails from the stockyards in Chicago, and then took that hair off the tail, and then made filters, and then used that hair and combined it with latex rubber, and then made seat cushions for automobiles. So that company's still in business today. They don't make seat cushions, or they don't use green salted cow switches or cattle switches, as the Bolton said. They use a synthetic fiber and make filters for like aquariums, and different filters is, like mesh filters. It's what they make today. This shot kind of looks back northeast, and we can see Bloxham and Company up here in the top center. Then the nickel plate freight house happens to be here kind of in the lower center on the right-hand side, and there's a couple boxcars here, a Milwaukee Road boxcar, a Santa Fe boxcar, and then a coal dealer. And I'd have to really zoom in to see what road name is on this copper here, but a large coal dealer, and then extensive trackage through this area on the south side. Nickel plate freight house. We were talking about freight houses 2 weeks ago. And this does not show up in the 1936 Sanborn map. So this was built after 1936. And something that I found interesting, this is a photo of a crossing watchman from the Michigan City newspaper, showing the freight house in the background. But if you look, there is a New York Central side door semi-trailer. Well, what is a New York Central side door semi-trailer doing at a nickel plate freight house? Well, after a little bit of research, as it turns out that way cars, meaning box cars that handled the less than carload, was eliminated across the South Shore, and all the LCL shipments, less than carload shipments that would be going to the freight house, was trucked from South Bend, and the New York Central closed their freight house up on the Michigan Central a block away, and then used the newer nickel plate freight house. So that New York Central truck came from South Bend, where it was consolidated with different freight from the large freight house in South Bend, and then all the LCL was trucked to the nickel plate freight house, where local customers can pick up their orders. And then the Pier Marquette kind of stands alone in its area. I don't have a track diagram, but the 1936 Sanborn maps kind of shows an area. We have these two are put together. So the top one connects to the bottom one with this little zigzag area here. But we have the depot here, the freight house up here in blue on the top, a coal dealership, and then a construction company. I believe they got gravel in here. But 1947, another Perry Johnson photo showing Grand Rapids bound Pier Marquette train with E7s, ready to snag the mail on the mail crane here on the left-hand side. Postcard photo of the brick depot. And then in the 60s and 70s, GP30s and GP35s were the common power. So this is a Grand Rapids bound freight train. And Franklin Street, Highway 421 crosses right here about where the first boxcar is on the track here. This looks back west, so this is an eastbound train. And then turned around, and the conductor and the caboose is snagging orders of that same train heading back east. So this Brown Sand, Gravel and Company was that construction company. Aerial shot off here on the left. This parking lot was where the passenger depot was. We see the freight house here in the center, and then the Brown Gravel and Sand Company that off to the right hand side or the left hand side of the photo. So as we talked about LDEs, layout design elements, it said string 2 or 3 of them together to make something plausible. Well, each one of these could stand alone as a little switching layout by itself, but you add 2, 3, 4 of them together, and you can make a decent little layout. So what I did was I took these three LDEs, the Monon Michigan Central one, the Harbor area, and the South Harbor branch of the nickel plate, and then started building that in the 10-foot by 12-foot spare bedroom that I had. So how do we connect them? Well, we have just the three of them together, but if we took the Monon here in yellow, connected it up with the nickel plate here in red, put a couple little staging tracks along the third side of the wall, and then popped behind the backdrop connection, and then ran it around back to the yard, and then the New York Central, Michigan Central here in green, connected it up with the little staging yard. We could have two separate loops, one loop of a New York Central train running around if you're going to do work, or a train on the Monon running in circles between the Monon and the nickel plate back and forth. But with the industries in here, you could make up a nice little small bedroom layout. So I drew it up on a piece of paper and accidentally drew radiuses as diameters. So these curves are twice as sharp as they should be. But up on the top here, we see a Pullman, we see a bicycle manufacturer, furniture factory up on the top end, and then the freight house of the New York Central and the Monon here, and with the interchanges between the two, and then the South Harbor spur on the bottom of the thing diagram here, with the 5-track staging yard of the New York Central here. So after I drew up this, I developed a full-size HO paper track plan of the layout. This is kind of a early discussion of the layout, or early idea of the layout to see if it could work. And I was tempted more than once about switching to N scale and to really get it in there. But I feel that it's kind of hard to scan the full size 10-foot by 12-foot paper track plan to get everything in here. But I think it conveys the key points of the layout. And it started construction at 5-track staging yard on the New York Central, and that's about as far as it got. Staged some trains here, a nickel plate Jeep, a New York Central E, Monon BL2, and then a South Shore 800. And then not too long after this photo was taken, my wife said, "I think I might be pregnant," and then there went that. So fast forward 15 years, and we build a detached garage outside. We bought the lot next door, cleared it. It was a wooded lot, and fenced it in and made a nice side yard. And then I'm thinking, okay, well, now I got a 12-foot by 23-foot area to build a layout in. How am I going, or what am I going to build? So the previous 12 years, okay, Michigan City, Michigan City, Michigan City. So we started with this area here, the 3 LDEs. And then I'm like, well, I like these 3 other ones here, the Monon South Yard, and the nickel plate South Shore interchange, and the the South Shore Lincoln Avenue yard. So what if we connected up the top 2, or connected up the nickel plate and the Monon by a helix, and then tucked the 2 back underneath, and then as a removable section, the orange here. So that's kind of what I did. So we have the garage here. So basically it's a loop to loop, or a helix to helix double deck layout, kind of see here, with a removable section in the main part here. So this is permanent on the right, and then a removable section on the left. So we're just looking at this is just a rough track plan here that I drew up the last couple days. The New York Central here in green follows a helix down to staging. The Monon in yellow comes up, crosses the South Shore at 10th Street. You see the 2 running parallel to each other, and with a Pullman interchange. The New York Central Freight or Passenger Depot here in green, the New York Central Freight House in green, the Monon Freight House here in yellow, the interchange between the 2, and then the 2 the Monon crossing the Michigan Central to head out to the South Shore interchange. And then on the top up here, which would be along the long wall without the door, the New York Central kind of runs behind a backdrop, and then the nickel plate South Harbor in blue, and then the two join up a helix and go down to the next level. When I said the next level, there's kind of a lower, this one is, the top level is 52 inches off the floor. So the staging level for the Michigan Central as it comes around the helix has 4 tracks on one side and 5 tracks on the other end. And that one is 48 inches off the floor. So we can have a continuous run on the New York Central from staging yard to the one helix up across the scenic area, down the other helix across to the other staging yard. So the staging level is 48 inches off the floor. And then the lower level, kind of can see it here, the Monon again here in yellow, this which is the blue here, and the lower level is the Pure Marquette and the interchange track to the Monon. The 4-track south yard, US 20 crossing at the south end, and then a staging yard, a joint nickel plate on the blue and Monon on the yellow on the one side of the wall, and then the South Shore nickel plate interchange on the one side. So again, another continuous run between the nickel plate and the South Shore. But what's under construction is only right here is the South Harbor, or sorry, the nickel or the Monon South Yard in the lit area. Right above it, it's kind of hard to see, but kind of floating on top of the area is the staging yard, and that comes on the outside of this helix. So one track heads up counterclockwise, one track heads down counterclockwise to a 4-track helix. So on the top of the shelf here is where the Monon New York Central Pullman area is going to be, and then turn the corner to the right here. Can kind of see the Monon South Yard here, scenic, a little bit above it, the staging yard, and then where this roll of paper on top is going to eventually be the Monon South or Monon New York Central Pullman area. So the only thing that's really built right now is the Monon South Yard. So we can see US 20 here kind of heading off into the corner. To the right is the staging track, one track for a long track for the Monon, and then a joint Monon nickel plate shorter tracks, 2 of them. So you can stage 4 trains there, 2 short ones, 2 long ones. Really either one for the nickel plate, one for the Monon, and then the other 2 tracks can be for either or. But we see Highway 20 crossing here, the south end of the yard, have Dr. Show's ANO tape factory on the side here, which is kind of just a low relief building. And then Clark Equipment is just represented by a chain link fence and a loading dock. So we see their loading dock here. The track to ANO tape up on the top. A little further, the crossovers, which is just like the prototype, minus 1 crossover from track 1 to track 2 as a trailing crossover. But all the other crossovers are there. So if you're sitting here on the track 1, you can work your way, sort your cars into the 4 different tracks. And then as you head north, we see that 1 track 2 would be the back track, as they called it. And then further north, as you're working along, this is like working to the left. The tracks come down, filter in. A stub track, a siding little track for the Monon caboose, and the Earl Road cross is right at the north end of the yard. And then we see the Pure Marquette crossing with the interchange track that kind of leads off into the helix. So eventually this will be built out a little bit, but probably 4 or 5 cars can be spotted on the Monon or the interchange track here. And then on the upper level, we're kind of laying it out right now, but the New York Central Freight House is being built with Walther's modular pieces, and then a a guy in the southwest suburbs, I forget the something lumber company, had a G scale plan for the Monon freight house that I bought for like $7, and then rescaled it to make a foam core board mock-up of the Monon freight house to work with track planning. So that's how it looks right now. Moving to my friend's layout, he's got a 1,300 square foot basement empire, and he's modeling Conrail in 1985. So we have Michigan City here again. By 1985, the nickel plate was cut north of I forget the name of the street, but the yard was removed and the South Harbor spur was removed, along with the Monon track was removed. So his layout theme is more of a as if Conrail would have kept it instead of sold the line to Amtrak in the 70s and used it as a through route. So he's kind of a Detroit to Chicago automotive pipeline, you can put it that way, that industries were developed and kept along. So he kind of likes the area of the yard, the coaling tower, the harbor area, and then he likes the power plant area. So what he kind of did was, instead of the New York Central running down, he kind of took a little modeler's license and then moved the main line parallel with the South Shore power plant, Lincoln Avenue yard, and then crosses the South Shore at the far end of street running at a place called Sheridan. So a couple photos of his layout. This is the coaling tower, 3D printed from Shapeways, if anyone is interested, on the east side of town. This would be the west side, right before the swing bridge. So the New York Central Freight Yard in the backside, in the background here. What's going to be the swing bridge? So we see it goes down to a single track crossing the swing bridge. The base is built. We see a dry creek bed right here, but eventually this will have a superstructure up. And then the harbor area, we see the creek heading out to the lake. We see the old 1856 lighthouse mock-up, and you can't see it, but there's the 1904 pierhead light will be modeled back as you head out of town. And then a paper mock-up of the floor plan of the New York Central Depot. Turning the corner here, we have a Nipsco switcher, and then the Nipsco power dumping area, dumping shed, and then a large cooling tower, and eventually there'll be a power plant built up in this area. But we can see the coal piles already starting to take shape. And then this shot looks back through town, and then the South Shore crossing here in the lower screen, lower part of the frame, and then an interchange with the South Shore in here. So a little bit of modeler's license, but I think it still represents a good feeling for Michigan City on his layout. So some of the learning points as we wrap this up: select a prototype that fits your interest and fits your layout needs. I would have changed it to the Druthers term on the John Allen. Do your research. If you're modeling, if you're going to be a prototype modeler, there's plenty of research out there. A lot of times I do this research sitting at work on my phone when I have a few minutes. That's just search Michigan City Railroad, and you never know what comes up. Thousands of photos, and you find one little piece of information, no matter how small it is. It's a piece of a million, one single piece of a million-piece jigsaw puzzle. So one little photo adds to another little photo, which makes a little scene, and those scenes eventually come together and then put together a large completed puzzle. Layout design elements, taking each one of these little elements that could be a little standalone switching area on its one, you tie 2 or 3 of them together and you have a plausible layout. And then selective compression within each LDE. We really didn't get into it, but like this grain elevator here in this off the right hand side, it wasn't rail served. I don't think it's gonna it doesn't, it was there in the 60s, but it wasn't rail served, so it kind of got squeezed off. So selective compression is your friend, but keep the main elements in each layout design element, and I think eventually it's going to turn into a reasonable expectation of a model. Before I hit the questions here, this paper track layout that I did some 15 years ago, I took to the Model Railroad Club in Michigan City here, and then rolled it out on the table, and just talking about it, and seeing, and the guy walks up and looks and scratches his, is this Michigan City? And he just wasn't in the conversation, and just looks at it and sees some major points, and immediately he knew what it was. So I think that that track plan, with the research and how everything pieced together, was a decent representation of, or going to be a decent representation, and eventually will be a decent representation of what Michigan City looked like in the 60s. So that's kind of my layout plan, and the prototype elements, and what I'm planning on doing in my garage here. So if there's any questions, I'm glad to answer. Prototype modeling, anything else like that.
Seth, this is not a question, but a comment. I really like this idea of presenting the blocked out layout design elements superimposed on an aerial photograph.
So
it makes it a lot more easy to follow.
So you are talking like this here, right?
Like those kind of pictures, yes.
Yes. A couple other, I didn't see their names, but I did this presentation a little bit, and they weren't from the area, and another guy was from the area. So he kind of, I have a handout map, and I kind of jump, but not really jump around a little bit, but a little scatterbrained, I guess. But thanks. That was kind of something that I came up with that kind of helps you figure out what area is what area. So thank you for that comment. So
I think you got a very good program here. Very much enjoyed it, and I've lived in this area all my life. Spent a lot of time around Michigan City area, and you hit all the elements I could think of. So
who is this?
My name's Jim Messina.
Okay. So when I originally did this program, started it, the layout does not include the South Shore street running. So that was one thing that got axed. It does not include the swing bridge. So that's one thing that got axed. It does not include the coaling tower. So you think of the iconic structures in Michigan City, but then if you look at the details, some of what made Michigan City work as a city and a freight car destination, I think that it looks at it almost a different area, but it still has some main points. And it's not, if you come rail fan, you're going to rail fan the South Shore, you're going to hit the shops, but you might hit the swing bridge. But there's a lot of stuff that disappeared in the 70s and really in the 80s that I'm going to end up modeling. So hopefully it's a time machine that will bring back memories.
I was glad to see you included the Monon Depot there.
Yes, the harbor area
It's drastically changed today.
It has. I had one photo. The News Dispatch newspaper made all their photos available. If I can, I'm not going to. Well, let's see if I can find it here. Give it a second here. As you can see, I collect pretty much everything Michigan City. So I've got aerial photos, first layouts, wiring diagrams. Each individual, each industry has their own photo, but see if I can find it. Yes, this is the photo right here. Saying that the area changed. This is a 1975 photo. No, a tornado did not come through the area. This was redevelopment. So they the city bulldozed everything. This is, let's see, First Street is up here, Second, Third, Fourth Street right here. So
You're not sharing it.
up, thank you, Bob. Let's see, how new share.
Yeah, you're sharing it, but it's
Okay,
just not
how's that?
There you go. Yeah, yeah, there you
See
go.
this aerial photo now?
Yep.
Okay, so we have Fourth Street, which is Highway 12. Kind of, here's the courthouse on the left-hand side of the screen, if you're familiar with Michigan City. So the library sits kind of in the left center, Franklin Street running down, but the city bulldozed like a 5-block, 6-block square area for redevelopment. And this photo's 1975. The Monon Freight House is still there, but even into the 90s, this still was pretty much vacant land. Still, even today, a couple blocks south is just ready for development. So, you know, for 50 years almost, it took a while to redevelop, but about in the late or early 70s, late 60s, yes, the area did change dramatically.
That's the New York Central Freight House, isn't it?
No, this one, see if I can zoom in. Oh, yes, that is the New York Central Freight House.
Yeah.
The Monon Freight House is in this area here,
yeah.
which is already bulldozed. But the
I-
New York Central Freight House and then the shop complex, which is now condos, and then the Naval Armory on the other side of the creek is still here today. But these two buildings are long gone. The grain elevator is long gone. The New York Central passenger depot, that's very much endangered. This building here is still there, and a couple other ones are here. The newspaper has been demolished. The courthouse has been added on. The fire station is long gone. Couple of these buildings on Franklin Street and 4th Street are still there, but the library sits in this area, in this blank area right here. But yes, stuff has changed quite a bit in the since the 60s and 70s, and I want to go back before the bulldozers met the north part of town.
Seth, I thank you for a very interesting presentation.
Thank you,
I
Alex.
may have an interruption from the Chicago area, a little west of you guys. You have one LDE that I happen to be planning to include that you didn't, was the prison.
The prison, let's see if I can pull it up. It's kind of off its side. Give me one
Now,
second.
I had a reason for this prison, not that I'm in love with prison. I
The
needed
prison,
a view block
really,
in
okay.
front of another track,
Um,
and I thought the wall would do a good job.
Since we're talking about the prison, give me one second here. I gotta find the maps here. And are looking for Sanborn maps. Where are they at? I recently switched new computers, so everything right now is on a external hard drive. So give me a second to find. Got to go up a folder.
Sort of like Microsoft moved your cheese.
Yes. Oh, not one. And Alex was talking about the prison here. I didn't include the prison as it's kind of on the outskirts of one of the LDEs. Prison lead. Nope.
Well, I don't mean to make a big deal about it. I'm sorry if I distracted you.
No, I clicked on the wrong file directory here. Let me find it here. The prison has its own Sanborn map, and I want to make sure that this is it. Yes, okay. I don't think you can see it until I share it. New share. This one. Okay, see the prison here. The Indiana State Prison, all the other prisons in the state are correctional facilities. Michigan City is the only prison. It had its own track that came in, and a boiler house got coal. But in the 20s, actually, they used prison labor to make not license plates, but hats. I've seen photos of prisoners making hats in the prisons. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4 spur tracks inside the wall of the prison. But in the 60s, the only thing that they were getting was coal to feed the power plant inside, for heating and lighting for the prison. But Sanborn maps are great. You can cells, dining room, general warehouse, and then back over here on the north side, warehouse, fireproof construction, furniture factory of fireproof construction, and then we can see the spur tracks heading onto it. So thank you for bringing that up, Alex.
Very welcome.
All right, Seth, great job today. Thanks for putting together that presentation and love the detail.
We see this, you see my PowerPoint here real quick.
Yes, we do.
Let me scroll back up to it. We've got 180 slides, but probably be easier to go back here so we can see what Alex is talking about. In the New York Central map. Okay, let me slideshow. Nope. We'll just zoom it in here. The prison was actually the tracks all the way up here, like this 138 and such like that. So it came off, it was probably a good quarter mile off the main line. So if you're standing along the main line, you're not going to see it here, but runaround track, there's a hat factory, a chair factory, garment factory here at 136, and then the prison was all the way at this into this spur. So I'm only modeling the first industries that are right along the side here. So
I'll have to use modeler's license and move it.
yeah, you could. Okay.
All
So
right. Well,
questions?
thanks. Yeah, thanks again, Seth. Are there any other questions for Seth?
Yes.
All right. Well, we are back at our 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central time. We don't have anybody set up for next week, but if anybody comes to the fore, I will let everybody know via email, and we should be good. Happy holidays if I don't talk to you before that. And Seth, thanks again. Great job.
No problem. Anytime, Greg.
All right. We'll see you guys. Have a nice night.